Revealed, I discovered my daughter's incredible wedding online, so I sold her home for an unexpected betrayal. Jim sat in his quiet living room, the dying light of the day spilling through the cracked window, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. His hands, calloused and stained from years at the garage, trembled as he scrolled through his phone. The sharp contrast between metal grease and the bright images on the screen struck him hard. There it was, a photo of Katie, radiant in a stunning white dress, surrounded by flowers. A stab of unrecognizable emotion cut through him. When had she become a stranger? His mind raced back, fighting against the weight of regret. He had always believed that success meant stability. Providing was a badge of honor he donned proudly. But that focus had come at a cost, and with each passing day, it became painfully obvious. He'd missed the moments that mattered, the hugs after a tough day, the laughter over silly jokes, the dreams they shared in quiet corners of their family home. The gulf between him and Katie had widened, turning into a chasm carved by his tireless pursuit of success. What he thought was love had morphed into a prison of his own making. The decision to sell their home screamed desperation. He thought about how the money might fund her dream honeymoon or an art gallery to showcase her artwork, two things she cherished, two things he never gave her. He envisioned her smile, heard her laughter in his mind, and for a fleeting moment, the idea felt like redemption. But what if, in doing so, he was merely pouring fuel on the fire of their icy relationship? Questions spiraled within him, battling for attention. Wasn't love supposed to be about presence, not possessions? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he contemplated all of this, the phone buzzed in his hand, an incoming call from Katie. Heart racing, he accepted, but the warmth he hoped for wasn't there. The conversation unraveled before him, a tempest of hurt feelings and miscommunications. When he finally revealed his decision, silence engulfed the line. You sold her home? Do you even care what this means to me? Her voice was a low tremor, an earthquake beneath their strained relationship. I thought you'd understand, Jim protested, desperation clawing at his chest. Katie, I wanted you to have what? A shiny thing bought with love you never showed? Her words pierced him deeper than the wrench he held in his hands at work. The fight turned visceral, exposing wounds that ran far deeper than any disagreement could indicate. Feelings of hurt and hopelessness washed over him, mixing with pride, the pride that had once led him to believe he was doing right by her. It felt like the walls were closing in, muffling her pleas, amplifying his failures. Minutes later, they both hung up with nothing resolved, only the echoes of their last words reverberating in the silence of the home they once filled with laughter. Jim stood there, a storm of emotions crashing against resolve. His heart ached with the realization that he was losing his daughter, not to distance or time, but to choices. Above all, could he really bridge the chasm between them? Or was it already too late? Jim sank into the worn recliner, its fabric echoing years of memories, Katie's little hands gripping the arms as she pretended to drive him to wild adventures in her imaginary world. Now it felt as if that past was sewn into the very fibers of the chair, a bittersweet reminder of the bond he had taken for granted. His phone lay silent on the table, each moment of stillness amplifying the emptiness he felt. He replayed their heated exchange in his mind, analyzing every word. Was he really that far from the father she needed? The realization hit him like an ice-cold splash of water. He had let his ambitions overshadow his parental instincts, and now she was slipping through his fingers. In that silence, doubt twisted inside him, as fierce and tenacious as the grease stains on his hands. A thought emerged, relentless. What if he could still salvage their relationship? What if he could turn this betrayal into something stronger? Fueled by a flicker of determination, Jim found himself planning. He picked up the phone, hesitated, then set it down. He was terrified she wouldn't want to hear from him. But who was he kidding? The only way to repair this rift was to reach out to unearth the father inside him. The following days were a blur of self-examination. Jim started to meticulously reverse-engineer their past. What had worked? What had failed? Little by little, he gathered threads of their history, stitching them back together in his mind. He dug deep, recalling not only the missed moments, but also the things Katie had shown interest in over the years: her love for painting, her late-night musings, the dreams about traveling. One rainy afternoon, while tidying up the cluttered garage, an idea sparked. Amongst the forgotten relics, a dusty easel, squished tubes of paint, and brushes, he discovered the remnants of her artistic passion. Memories of Katie painting as a child flooded back, reminding him how brightly her spirit once burned. That flicker of inspiration fueled a plan, a surprise art show celebrating her talent. An instance of validation he had never thought to provide. He began to methodically assemble a gallery of her work, not just the pieces from childhood, but inviting her recent creations as well. He envisioned a cozy local space where they could both breathe away from the tension of their home. Perhaps there, beneath the muted lights and soft music, they could rediscover each other. But would Katie even attend? The thought gnawed at him. Confidence faltered in the face of possible rejection. Just as he was about to abandon his initiative, a whisper of resolve inspired him. What if the show wasn't just about her art, but about healing? The chance to show her that he recognized her worth, something he had neglected for so long. With each stroke of the brush, as he painted the invite to Katie, an opening for dialogue and connection, something inside him shifted. He was not merely a father in crisis. He was a father willing to change, to grow, to take responsibility. He placed the finished invitation in an envelope. The vivid colors bleeding through the paper, instantaneous guilt assailed him as he thought about how it could go wrong. What if she tore it up, just like she did when he had neglected to show up for her dance recital years ago? But this time, he quieted that dark voice. The only way to know was to take the risk. With deliberate effort, he dialed her number, each ring testing his resolve. When she answered, he felt a mixture of dread and hope coiling tightly in his chest. "Can we talk?" he managed, determination fighting against doubt in his voice. On the other end, silence stretched unbearably, his heart pounding with anticipation. He took a deep breath, preparing for whatever response she would give. The moment had come to confront his greatest fear. Would he face rejection, or was this the unsettling path toward reconciling the love they once shared? The silence stretched, a thick, oppressive fog between Jim and Katie. Each second felt like an eternity, leaving him exposed, vulnerable. What had he hoped to achieve with this call? Did he honestly believe their relationship could mend with a mere invitation? "Dad?" Katie's voice broke through his reverie, a fragile whisper tinged with confusion. It was both a relief and a trigger, sending his mind spiraling back to their last argument, the walls that had been built too high, and the distance too painful. "Katie," he faltered, the rush of words choking him. "I wanted to talk about, well, everything. I know I've let you down." The admission felt like admitting defeat, but it also opened the door he'd been searching for. "Is this about that art show you're planning?" she asked, her tone flat, devoid of enthusiasm or malice. It cut deeper than he expected. "Yes, it is. But it's more than just an art show. I thought maybe we could start over. I know I haven't supported you the way I should have. I see that now." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I want to create a space for you to be celebrated, to be seen. I've missed so many moments, but I want to change that." Silence filled the gap once again. Each heartbeat thudded painfully loud in Jim's ears. "Do you really think one show is enough to make up for years of neglect?" she said, her skepticism evident. His heart sank. She was right. One evening couldn't possibly erase the years lost to ambition and self-interest. But this was his first step, a commitment to acknowledging his failures, to reach beyond the superficial and dig into the roots of their relationship. "Katie, I can't promise it will fix everything, but I want to try. I want to be there for you, support your passions," he replied, his voice steadier now. "I know I can't change the past, but if you give me a chance, I want to be involved in your life again." There was a shift in her voice, a crack in her defenses. You aren't the only one who has changed, Dad. I'm not the little girl who used to look up to you anymore. It was a stark realization for Jim. That time had transformed them both. The little girl with paint-stained hands had grown into someone who didn't need his validation. I understand, he said, holding on to hope. But I want to know the woman you're becoming. I want to support you as you find your way. You don't have to do this alone. A long pause followed, and Jim could hear the faint sounds of her breathing on the other end, the weight of the moment pressing down hard. Okay, she finally said, her voice softer, tentative. I'll come, but don't expect everything to just go back to normal. Relief washed over him, mingling with newfound determination. Perhaps this show could be more than just an event. It could be a significant shift in their dynamic. A chance to redefine their connection. Thank you, Katie. That's all I ask, he said, feeling a fragile thread of hope binding them once more. As he hung up, a wave of nerves and excitement rushed through him. Planning the show had become a personal mission, but now it felt like something else entirely. This was no longer only about celebrating Katie's art. It was an opportunity for him to demonstrate that he was committed to her, not just as a father, but as an ally she could lean on. Jim gathered his materials, planning the logistics of the space, the layout of art pieces, and inviting friends, but unease lingered in the back of his mind. Would he really be able to show Katie that he had changed? And what would happen if the show didn't inspire the connection he so desperately sought? Determination surged again as he began to draft out the next steps. He needed a theme, a vision that encapsulated not just her talent, but the journey they both were embarking on together. Just as he settled into his thoughts, the phone buzzed again. It was a text from Katie, a picture of a painting she had worked on recently, showing, perhaps, a peek into her world. The reaction it provoked was immediate, a visceral response that made him realize how much he had missed this. But as he studied the vibrant strokes and intricate details, a chill crept over him. What if she didn't like the show he was planning? What if he had overstepped again? Every step forward felt precarious, like walking a tightrope. The moment had come to confront another fear. He had begun to uncover the depths of his daughter's creativity, but now, he needed to embrace it even if it turned out to be far from what he anticipated. Jim took a deep breath, reminding himself that this was a cocoon of discovery, both for him and Katie. They were stepping into a new chapter, one that had the potential to transform their relationship. Now the real work was about to begin, and he knew they would face not just the art, but the complexities of reconciling their past. The deepening silence that followed felt heavy with expectation. Could he meet her where she was, even if it led him down an unforeseen path? Each detail he planned felt like a heartbeat steering them closer to something greater or a precipice of uncertainty. He reached for his sketch pad, unable to shake the nagging feeling that the greatest reveal was yet to come. What would it take to truly understand Katie's vision? The call to action loomed, and Jim sensed it wouldn't just be a matter of supporting her art. It would demand embracing the entirety of who she had become. What if the art show wasn't solely about her? What if, in piecing together her experience, he accidentally pieced together his? Each brushstroke of understanding would stretch their bond to the breaking point, and he couldn't prepare for where that might lead them. Jim sat crouched at the cluttered dining table, sketches and notes scattered like the remnants of his past decisions. The urgency of redefining his relationship with Katie fueled him, but uncertainty percolated in the corners of his mind. How could he know if his efforts were in the right direction? Each idea he jotted down felt both promising and fraught with risk. Breathing in deeply, he allowed himself a moment of contemplation. Planning for Katie's show meant stepping into a world he had long abandoned, the vibrant and chaotic life she now inhabited. It would require vulnerability, his own artistic endeavor woven into a framework of dependence that he had often overlooked. He flipped through his ideas, trying to find common ground between his vision and the essence of Katie's art. Each piece was profound, revealing passions and fears he had been blind to over the years. The realization struck him: these paintings might be a reflection of her, but also a mirror of his own fears. Suddenly, an idea sparked. What if he titled the show Emergence? It resonates with her efforts to share herself through her art and symbolizes his own emerging awareness of her world. A deeper meaning unfolded in his mind as he began sketching the show layout and entrance that gradually led visitors from dark shadows into bursts of color representing the different facets of her growth. But then pangs of self-doubt struck. Would she hate the name? What if it underscored his attempts to redefine their relationship in a way that felt insincere? Those notions wrestled with his determination. He wanted to contribute positively but feared coming off as controlling or misguided. The phone buzzed again, a text from Katie. This time, no pictures. Just a simple, "Could we talk?" I have some ideas for the show too. Anxiety coiled tight within his chest. On one hand, the prospect of incorporating her thoughts felt like progress. On the other hand, he hesitated. This was his territory, his attempt to forge a new path. Would his input be welcomed or the catalyst for another clash? Jim took a moment to pace the room, the floor creaking underfoot like haunting reminders of their dwindling connections. What would it look like to lay down the territory markers of his past? What he needed to confront wasn't just his fear of rejection, but also the reality that he had to meet Katie on her terms, not just accommodate her artistic vision, but embrace her as a fully formed individual. Emergence. The word echoed through his mind like a drumbeat. His heart raced at the thought of sharing this concept with her. It wasn't just an art show. It could be the first step in genuinely opening the lines of communication. Yet, the risk was considerable. If she dismissed it outright, what would that mean for their relationship? His fingers trembled slightly as he sent her a text. "I'd love to hear your ideas, Katie. Maybe we can meet tomorrow? I have some concepts we could explore together." He lingered on the send button, the weight of the moment causing sweat to bead his forehead. Could he handle the outcome? The chilling thought of her rejecting his concept gnawed at him. Yet, what was he hoping to accomplish if he didn't invite her into the conversation? The response was swift. "Sure. I'd love that." The relief washed over him momentarily, but it was soon replaced by the simmering unease bubbling beneath the surface. What would unfold in their conversation? Real change required active participation. It would mean Jim standing shoulder to shoulder with Katie, risking derision or disappointment for the sake of a closer bond. Could they truly navigate toward a new understanding? Would either of them grasp the vulnerability required to shift the paradigm of their relationship? As the day of their planned meeting drew closer, Jim plunged into his sketches with renewed fervor. Each stroke whispered of commitment intertwining with fear. In embracing her art, would he uncover parts of himself he had long buried? As the pieces came together, he sensed they were on the brink of an unveiling not just of her works, but of themselves. Turning his attention to the layout once more, the questions lingered in the air like those early mornings when the world felt ripe with possibility. Would tomorrow herald a transformation that reached beyond the canvas? Would his daughter's emerging strength become a beacon guiding him home? His fingers brushed the edge of her art, the very embodiment of the connection he so sought to restore. A subtle fire ignited within him, reckoning that perhaps change was as much about accepting the past as it was about forging a new future. As he put down his pencil, he understood one truth: to truly emerge, they would have to dive deeper into their shared complexities. The awareness dawned on him this show was just a backdrop. The real artistry, the real connection, lay in the vulnerability they were ready to embrace together. But would it be too late to make the changes that could truly reshape their destinies? The following day bore the weight of expectation, and Jim felt the urgency swelling within him. The moment of their truth skated ever closer. What would they ultimately discover about themselves and each other? Jim awoke the next morning, the calmness of dawn juxtaposed against the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. The sunlight filtering through the curtains illuminated the sketches on the table, the outlines of his tentative plans, a stark reminder of the vulnerability he was about to embrace. He couldn't afford to view this meeting as mere obligation. It had morphed into a pivotal moment, to reforge the connections that had frayed over the years. He paced the small kitchen, his stomach tightening with apprehension as he brewed coffee. The familiar aroma provided a short-lived comfort as it mingled with unease. What if the conversation devolved into another argument? His chest tightened at the memory of past disagreements, moments lost in defensiveness rather than understanding. Today had to be different. He couldn't slip back into old habits. The stakes were too high. As he sipped the steaming coffee, he let his thoughts coalesce around what he wanted to share with Katie. Emergence lingered in the back of his mind. It was more than a theme. It could become a framework for their new beginning. Each aspect of the visual presentation could symbolize not just critique or appreciation of her work, but a mutual discovery of what lay beneath their strained relationship. Determined to convey this vision, he mentally rehearsed scenarios, anticipating what her reactions might be. Would she embrace his idea, or would it be met with skepticism? The different tangents of their conversations played out like a movie scene in his head, each attempt at articulation morphing into an internal debate. When the hour neared for their meeting, his distractions shifted from planning to self-reflection. Standing in front of the mirror, Jim examined his expression, searching for resolve amidst the anxiety. He ran a hand through his hair, breathing deeply, attempting to quell the doubt creeping into his thoughts. "Just be honest," he whispered to his reflection. "Share not just ideas, but who you are." The reminder settled into his chest like a quiet determination. As Katie entered the cafe, one of her favorite local spots, Jim felt the atmosphere shift. She walked with an air of confidence that both thrilled and intimidated him. The radiant art pieces she had immersed herself in were visible in her attire, a colorful dress that showcased her personality, yet reflected something he recognized as vulnerability. "Hey, Dad," she greeted, a bright smile framing her face. The warmth in her voice cut through his tension, momentarily dissolving the knots in his gut. "Hey, Katie. I've been thinking about the show," he started, not quite aware of how to articulate the emotions caught in his throat. Immediately, he wanted to reach for the sketches, to share the evolution of emergence, yet he sensed that listening would be just as vital as speaking. "I have ideas too," she said, settling into the chair opposite him. "I was thinking about showcasing how my art reflects experiences, my growth. These pieces are like my journey." An electric current shot through him as he connected with her sentiment. This was it. This was the vulnerability they were both seeking. However, Jim hesitated. What if his ideas overwhelmed her own? He struggled for a moment before deciding to share his plan. "What if we use the term emergence as the title?" A canvas of possibilities opened. "It resonates with the theme of growth, not just yours, but ours." Her brow furrowed slightly, and for a brief moment, his heart raced. Had he alienated her with his ambition? Yet, she folded her hands, considering. "I like that. It's not just about my art, but about how we're emerging into new phases together." A flicker of hope ignited in Jim. Could they really weave their personal lives into something greater through this project? They continued to discuss ideas. Katie shared specific pieces, while Jim contributed concepts, each revelation weaving them closer together. Time slipped away, and he found himself fully immersed in the conversation, realizing the true depth of what they were embarking upon. He had come to share his ideas, but it blossomed into a collaboration, a dialogue that transcended their art. Their vulnerabilities lay bare, revealing dimensions of each other he had long overlooked. What had begun as a discussion about an art show became something more profound, a canvas for their lives and shared evolution. Jim felt an awakening within him, a discovery of strength and vulnerability alike. As they wrapped up their discussion, a new unease settled in. "Katie, what do you think is stopping us from evolving as a family?" he asked, daring to pry further into the complexities they faced. The table felt suddenly heavier, the weight of unspoken truths looming between them. Would Katie's response usher in another phase of their relationship, or would it reveal old wounds still unhealed? The moment hung palpably in the air. Whatever the answer, he realized they stood at the threshold of revealing deeper truths, and the discovery lay ahead. Where would they both go from here? The silence that enveloped them was thick, punctuated only by the sounds of clinking coffee cups and distant chatter from other customers. Jim's heart raced as he awaited Katie's response, uncertainty gnawing at his resolve. She was not just his daughter, she was a talented, budding artist, and now there was a chance for them to redefine how they engaged with one another. He didn't want to push her into uncomfortable territory. "You mean evolving as a family? You think there is something blocking us?" Katie's voice was tentative, her eyes searching his for a hint of encouragement or retreat. "Yes," Jim replied, feeling a mixture of dread and anticipation. "I wondered if maybe we haven't been honest with ourselves or each other. I've been circling back to the same things without addressing what really holds us back." Her laughter was light, but it felt like a shield, a protective response against deeper engagement. "Well, that's a pretty loaded question, Dad. Shouldn't we be focusing on the show instead?" He could sense her reluctance to dive into heavier waters, yet something in her tone revealed a flicker of curiosity. "True, but isn't it all connected? This show is about our growth, right? So if we're putting ourselves out there, shouldn't we also examine what's beneath the surface?" Katie glanced away, her gaze drifting to the window, watching passers-by as if they held the answers to his inquiries. Jim could feel the tension building again. Her hesitation felt familiar. "Honestly, Dad, I think we've both been guarding ourselves," she finally admitted, her voice lower, more earnest. "After everything that happened, it's hard to know if we're supposed to just move on or actually work through it. Maybe what we really need is to confront those things," he suggested, his heart racing at the prospect of stripping away their defenses. The idea felt risky, yet exhilarating, a leap into trust. Katie considered him, her expression unreadable. "What are you afraid of, Dad? What stops you from being more open?" The question hung like an uncoiling spring, tightening around him. His initial instinct was to deflect, to hide behind the shield of parental authority. Part of him yearned to keep her at arm's length for fear of facing his own vulnerabilities. But the path of honesty was beckoning. "I'm afraid of how fragile this feels," he admitted. "I've always prioritized stability, but maybe I've mistaken control for security. I don't want to lose you." Her face softened. "You won't lose me. But if we don't tackle the uncomfortable stuff, we'll just keep drifting apart, feeling like we're doing this alone." The gravity of her words settled inside him, stirring emotions he had long buried. This collaborative venture was not just about the art, it was a mirror reflecting their relationship, a chance to shatter past misconnections. "Then maybe we should try being honest, try digging deeper during this process. Let us not just present our art, but tell our stories," he urged, emboldened by a sudden surge of clarity. Katie smiled, a soft light illuminating her features. "I do like that. But we have to promise to not shy away from the messiness." "Deal," Jim nodded, a thread of excitement weaving through his generally guarded demeanor. As the conversation unfolded, they began to outline the structure of their collaboration, infusing the notion of emergence with themes of confrontation and truth. Ideas sparked between them like fireflies, illuminating shadows that had perched in the corners of their lives. However, a doubt lingered just beneath the surface. What if unveiling their truths unearths deeper, darker feelings? The paradox of their journey between vulnerability and potential estrangement loomed before him as they finalized their plans. "The art show will be our chance to be completely honest," he asserted, trying to quell the apprehension that brushed against him. "At the very least, we can show people the journey of getting there." "Exactly," Katie said, her voice brimming with newfound confidence. "But it's not just about what we show others. It's about what we discover about ourselves." As they parted ways that day, Jim could not shake the emerging sense of anticipation mingled with trepidation. They were both standing at the edge of evolution, ready to leap, yet unsure of where the fall might take them. Days clicked by, each one filled with brainstorming and late-night sketches, yet an undercurrent of tension threaded through their budding project, a sense that the real work was still to come. As Jim pushed against the boundaries of his ability to be open, he began to sense stirrings within that almost frightened him. He felt edges of truth he had feared for too long, and grappling with them could pave the way for his own personal emergence. Yet the question that lingered, nagging persistently, kept him on edge. What would happen when the walls that surrounded their realities came crashing down? Could they handle the revelations waiting beneath? The turning point was imminent. Secrets had their way of surfacing, and Jim feared the outcome of their clarity. Yet he remained resolute, knowing the journey was necessary no matter where it led. The next few weeks blurred into a blend of caffeine-fueled creativity and impromptu discussions that echoed through Jim's mind long after he left Katie's studio. The experience was electrifying, an exhilarating chaos that sparked a growing urgency inside him. Yet, it was accompanied by an unsettling feeling he couldn't shake. Each night, as the quiet of his home enveloped him, he grappled with buried truths, the fear of how deeply he was beginning to unearth his own vulnerabilities. One evening, while spreading sketches over their dining room table, he caught a glimpse of something that jolted him, an unrefined piece that echoed years of frustration and regret. It was a work Katie had discarded, yet it resonated with him. Vibrant colors clashed together, creating a chaos that felt too familiar. His heart sank as he began to understand its deeper representation, as if it laid bare the conflicted emotions he held toward their past. "Dad, can you help me choose the final pieces for the show?" Katie's voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. He nodded mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere, circling back to that moment of clarity with her. As they rifled through the selection of artworks, Jim struggled to stay present. He had a train to catch, one that led to a confrontation with himself. "I was thinking about that piece you tossed aside. I want to talk about it. I feel like it speaks to something deeper, maybe to both of us." Katie hesitated, and her eyes narrowed slightly. "You mean the chaotic one?" "Not sure it needs to be seen, Dad. It's just a mess." But even as she said it, Jim recognized the flicker of recognition in her expression, a silent acknowledgement of the reflections staring back at them. "It's not just a mess. It's an expression of our unraveling, isn't it?" He pressed, his tone urgent. "Just like your art, it can tell our story. When I look at it, I see an anger, a struggle not just yours, but mine too." She studied him, searching for hints of insincerity, but all she found was the intensity in his gaze. "Why do you think we shied away from the real conversations? Why hold back?" The environment shifted, stilled by the weight of their interaction. It felt pivotal. He was veering closer to something crucial, pushing aside their established boundaries. "Maybe because it's easier to hide in the shadows of our art instead of using it to confront what's on the canvas of our lives." Her voice cracked, laced with uncertainty. "Then let us trust that art can guide us through this," he asserted, a tentative resolve taking root. "Let us use the show as a platform not only to showcase our work, but to address the mess we've made of communication." Katie seemed to soften, but the tension lingered, threading through the air like a warning. "I'm scared, Dad. What if everything crumbles? What if we can't handle the truth?" Her question hung, heavy with implications, and Jim felt the familiar tug of fear. He had prided himself on being the solid ground for her, always striving to present a fortress of stability. But he was beginning to realize that steady walls could also create isolation. "I think that's the point. The vulnerability in our truths can either tear us apart or join us in ways we've never imagined," he replied steadily. "We can redefine this relationship. Let us strip back the layers just like we do with our art, layer by layer. Let us find beauty in the chaos." As they crafted the show playlist together, selecting pieces that encapsulated emotion, Jim felt the tension crack with the potential for revelations. Each selection was no longer simply a representation of talent. It became a gesture of willingness, a beacon of truth that he silently hoped might light a path forward. Yet, a shadow of doubt persisted, clawing at his insides. Would exposing their emotions draw them closer, or send them spiraling into deeper estrangement? Would the very act of peeling away the layers unveil wounds far too raw to confront? The question hovered between them as they worked diligently, the anticipation becoming almost suffocating. The art show was merely days away, but Jim knew that the real show was in the truths yet to be unveiled. As he turned to Katie, their eyes locked, it dawned on him. This was not just an exhibition of art. It was their lives, raw, unrefined, and breathtakingly vulnerable. With each brushstroke, they had painted themselves into a corner, facing a breakthrough or a breakdown. And Jim could feel it. The moment of truth was creeping closer, ready to unveil secrets that had long been hidden. What would emerge when they finally faced the reflections they had long avoided? The day of the show arrived with an electrifying stillness that rattled Jim's insides. He arrived early, the chill of the morning air seeping into his bones as he set up the space. Each frame hung as a silent witness to the journey he and Katie had undertaken. However, this was not merely about the physical artwork, it was an opportunity to confront their fractured relationship head-on. Jim meticulously positioned the artwork, but as he prepared, his mind was filled with thoughts he couldn't escape. Was he truly ready to expose the raw layers they had held so close for so long? The chaos of emotions that had colored not just the canvases, but also their lives loomed larger than the vibrant hues around him. Despite his attempts to focus, doubt wormed its way into his consciousness. What if the art did become a mirror, reflecting every unspoken hurt? What if it crumbled under scrutiny, revealing a fracture neither of them was prepared to face? Katie arrived, her presence infusing the space with a different kind of energy. She glanced around, her eyes catching on the chaotic piece Jim had insisted on exhibiting. For a brief moment, a flicker of apprehension crossed her face, but she straightened her shoulders, suppressing the emotion. This was her moment, an affirmation of her artistic identity. But behind that bravado, Jim recognized the familiar insecurity she had carried with her since childhood. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady yet thin. "More than ever," he replied, though inwardly he battled the unease that scratched at him. Within minutes, the gallery began to fill with friends, artists, and curious strangers. The initial hum of conversation coursed with excitement swirled around them, blending with hushed laughter and footsteps against the polished floor. As people engaged with each artwork, Jim couldn't help but observe their reactions, scanning not only their words, but the subtle facial expressions of discovery. He stood beside Katie as she engaged with an onlooker who praised her selected pieces. She was radiant, basking in the glow of validation she had yearned for. However, watching her, Jim felt conflicted. Each compliment was a reminder of the sacrifices they had both made, the lives they had temporarily sequestered beneath layers of creativity. As the evening progressed, Jim felt an unshakable urge to take control of the narrative. He could sense the tension rising. It was inevitable. The moment to peel back the layers approached inexorably, one heartbeat at a time. "Can we take a moment?" he murmured to Katie, his voice low but determined. She nodded, an apprehensive crease forming on her brow as they stepped away from the crowd. Once isolated, Jim caught her gaze. "Katie, I think we need to talk about the chaotic piece. It's resonating with everyone here tonight, but it goes beyond the surface. It's the conversation we've avoided for too long." She opened her mouth, hesitating before lowering her gaze, the weight of their unresolved tensions hovering directly between them. "Do we have to?" "Yeah, we do," he insisted, his voice urgent but soft. "We have to confront our truth, just like we confronted the canvas." Katie threw her arms around herself, as if to deflect the gravity of their unsteady ground. "Okay, but what if we aren't ready? What if it does tear us apart?" "Then we deal with it," Jim replied, feeling a surge of courage he hadn't known he possessed. "No more hiding. Let's create a new legacy." He could see her processing, the duality of fear and yearning battling within her. And in that moment, he recognized that his willingness to confront vulnerability in all its discomfort was the first step toward redefining their connection. Surrounded by the art representing their struggles, it crystallized for him. This was a pivotal moment. But as they stood on the cusp of revelation, a shadow fell over the exhibition's atmosphere. Someone in the crowd shifted, and Jim knew their intimate moment could be interrupted at any time. "Just promise me this," he said quietly, "that whatever comes from this, we do it together." The time had come to face what lay beneath the messy pigments and overlapping brushstrokes. Would they have the courage to embrace the truth that awaited them, to forge a new path forward through the chaos? The anticipation hung thick in the air, and with a deep breath, Jim steeled himself. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, a harsh reminder of the world waiting just beyond their artful refuge. They weren't yet ready for what would be revealed, and Jim knew the true confrontation was still ahead. What consequences awaited them once the veil was lifted? The moment lingered, each second stretching taut with unspoken words as Jim forced himself to hold Katie's gaze. He sensed the fear swirling within her, a tempest restrained by layers of anxiety and hope. The gallery thrummed with life beyond their sanctuary, but they stood still, poised on the precipice of something profound. "Let us just define what we want from this," Jim offered, trying to anchor their conversation in clarity. "The art has already changed us. Now, it's time to let it inform our truth. The chaotic piece, what does it mean to you?" Katie shifted her weight, uncertainty flickering in her eyes as her walls cracked ever so slightly. "It's about everything, the noise, the confusion, it mirrors my insecurities." She inhaled shakily, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Sometimes I feel like I don't belong in the world of art." The admission hit Jim hard. It felt sacrilegious for her to distance herself from their passion, from something that had brought them together. Empty words floated in his mind. He had always viewed Katie as the beacon of creativity. Hearing her doubt herself was shattering. "You're more than your doubts, Katie." The urgency crept into his tone, heightened by the rumbling fear of losing her spirit to doubt. "The chaos resonates with all of us. That's your strength. You breathe life into it, you make it real. Look at the way people react to it. They see you." He watched as her emotions battled beneath the surface, visible in the tightening of her brows and the trembling of her lip. She might have been lost in a world shaped by others' expectations, but the person standing before him was the force of nature he fell in love with. "Jim, I've always felt overshadowed," she confessed, small veins of vulnerability emerging in her tone. "By your talent, by just everything. What if the art only highlights that? Isn't that the whole point?" He pressed, emboldened by a newfound determination. "Our art isn't just for accolades, it's about finding ourselves in the mess. Your chaos is beautiful, just like you. It needs to be shared." He knew there were risks, that confronting old pains could send them spiraling instead of resolving. Yet, he felt a daring swell in his chest, a fierce belief that laying their truths bare wouldn't fracture them. Instead, it could illuminate the path forward. But then came the nagging doubt again. What did he know about Katie's internal struggles? Jim had always lived in the shadow of his own fears of being unloved, unseen. He had learned to counter them through self-expression, but what did that mean for her? Would he be the one to help her find that path, or would he lead her deeper into the storm? They stood in silence, the air heavy with possibilities. What if their confrontation wasn't just about the truth of the art? What if it required navigating the deepest crevices of their relationship, years of pain wrapped in layers of paint? "Can we turn this night into a defining moment?" Jim uttered, desperate to tether both their destinies. "Let us step into that chaos together. We can't hide anymore. We need to forge a new legacy." Before she could answer, the atmosphere shifted again. The distant chatter of the crowd blurred into an alarming crescendo. Jim caught sight of a figure edging toward them, a determined expression overtaking their features. One glance at Katie told him everything. They were running out of time. "Let us commit to this, Katie," Jim said, finding fresh conviction. "No more running from truths. Let us either solidify our bond or find new paths. We owe that much to ourselves." As the figure approached, a spine-chilling realization pulsed through him. They would have to confront not only the lingering fragments of their relationship, but the outside influences threatening to undermine everything they had worked for. With a flicker of defiance, Jim held her gaze, aware of a choice looming just ahead. Would they take that plunge together, or would the chaos pull them apart? The next moment could very well redefine both their fates. As the last remnants of the night faded, Jim stood alone in the gallery where the colors and textures of Katie's art danced in the soft glow of light. With the frantic buzz of opening night receding, silence hung in the air, intimately charged yet strangely comforting. It dawned on him. This wasn't merely an exhibition of canvases, but a brave unveiling of both their stories, their struggles, and what lay beneath the chaos. Reviewing the chaotic piece that had sparked their impassioned conversation, Jim felt something shift within him. He hadn't just seen the piece as a reflection of Katie's emotions, it had also cradled his own feelings of inadequacy and fear over the years. These emotional conflicts manifested not just as an artistic negotiation, but as a shared human experience tethering them together. Taking a deep breath, he recalled Katie's vulnerability, her admission of feeling overshadowed by his pursuit of success. The pain it inflicted clawed at his heart, igniting a fire of resolve within him. He had become so consumed with the ideals of success and stability that he failed to see the toll it had taken on his daughter. Realizing that he needed to confront more than just the art, Jim turned inward. Weeks of wiring emotions into the emergence show flashed through his mind. The anticipation had turned into reality, but the greater unveiling was the convergence of their personal evolutions, a journey he realized he shared with Katie, filled with both joy and discomfort. This moment had become an opportunity to reshape the narrative of their relationship. Those days of planning the show with her were not solely about supporting her creativity. They were a catalyst for Jim's metamorphosis, too. He had cast aside expectations of the perfect father figure, opening himself to humility and vulnerability, recognizing that his past hesitations had forged an emotional void between them. It was through embracing these shared struggles that they could begin to bridge the chasm that had formed. Jim stood under the gallery's muted lights, feeling the weight of the past begin to dissolve. Just as Katie had invited the world into her heart via her art, he, too, longed to express a deeper commitment, a promise to stand firmly by her side as a father, an ally, and an advocate for her dreams. With purpose, he turned to the exit, stepping into the evening chill. The fresh air invigorated him, clearing the lingering shadows from within. His phone buzzed, an incoming message from Katie. His heart raced as he read her brief but heartfelt note. "Let's talk. I'm ready to face everything together." Confidence surged within him, a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Here they stood on the brink of uncharted territory, both willing to confront their complexities together. He texted her back, "Absolutely, I'm ready, too. Let's meet at our favorite diner." The drive felt electric, anticipation building with every mile. Memories of Katie as a child, painting with reckless exuberance, flooded through his mind. His heart swelled with pride and heartfelt regret, mixed with gratitude for everything she had taught him inadvertently during those years lost to ambition. As he slid into the diner booth, he realized how different things felt now, the familiarity of the setting intertwined with a newfound hope. When Katie entered, her eyes illuminated with determination, he saw a reflection of himself, both transformed. "Dad," she started, her voice steady. "I want us to fully embrace who we are, not just artistically, but as a family." Tears prickled at the corners of his eyes, overwhelmed by the magnitude of her growth. "I want that too, Katie. It's time for both of us to emerge together." In that moment, as they began to share their ideas, dreams, and fears, Jim felt he had finally crossed the invisible threshold that had separated them for so long. Not just as a father supporting his daughter, but as two individuals ready to embark on a journey of mutual discovery. This time, there would be no extravagant gestures to win her love or respect. This was about the authenticity they could cultivate in the intimacy of vulnerability. The warmth in their voices, the honesty of their exchanges, blended together like colors on a canvas, illuminating the path toward a brighter dimension of understanding. By fully embracing their growth, through both insecurities and triumphs, Jim recognized they were crafting a legacy that would ground their relationship, not just a father and daughter, but a bond rooted in empathy, respect, and newfound strength. Returning home, Jim felt lighter, a sense of solid confidence within him, a recognition that he had taken meaningful steps toward reclaiming his role in Katie's life, fully committing to her journey as well as his own. That art gallery filled with canvases reflecting their entangled lives. Jim had emerged as more than a provider. He was now a partner, a navigator through the complexities of life's art. As he lay in bed, satisfaction washed over him. He could face tomorrow knowing they would confront whatever came next, united, daring themselves to fully emerge. This was more than personal achievement. It was the renewal of a connection, a credible homage to their story unfolding. As he drifted into sleep, a soft smile warmed his features as he made a promise to stay fully present, ready to capture the next brushstroke of their lives together. Now, it's your turn to take action. If you found this story of transformation meaningful, you need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive emotional journeys. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, helping us reach even more souls who can resonate with these stories. Comment below with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about Jim and Katie's journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. Your support matters. Let us keep the spirit of personal overcoming alive.